Hello again. Thank you for joining me back here in A Writer's Corner. In this episode, we're going to be really looking at the difference between writing, the creative part of writing, when we're doing it, when we're in it, when we're living it, and editing. We're going to look at why those two aspects of writing never come together as the same thing. Never the twain shall meet. This is all very civilized, isn't it? A nice cup of tea with a cup and a saucer. Have you got yourself a cup of tea? Go and get one now. Come back and join me. Okay, so the creative process, when you're actually doing it, when you're living it, when you're writing, when the muse takes you, you're in it. It's very much like being in a tornado, or you sometimes feel like you are the tornado, and as you're experiencing the story, you're writing it, you're part of it. You don't want anything to trip up that very beautiful process of creating. For example, you don't want to be there in the thick of it, really feeling the characters, feeling the situation, living it, being it, and then think to yourself, oh, what did I just write then? Is everything spelt right? Have I used the right punctuation? Should that be a comma or should it be a semicolon? Not sure. I'll have a think about that. You don't want to be doing that. Not when you're creating. You want to be creating when you're creating. You don't want to look at the dynamics of what you've written whilst you're writing it. Of course you don't. You want to enjoy it. You want to enjoy the process. And when the muse takes you, you're elevated to such highs, and sometimes you descend to such lows. But throughout the whole of the process, there's a steady sense of joy. It's like a creative fire within you. And then when you start to get all technical about what you've written, the editing part of it, that's very different. It doesn't feel like that at all. When you're looking at almost the mathematics of what you've written, how the sentences compare to other sentences, how they relate to other sentences, how the paragraphs compare and relate to other paragraphs, and how the book feels as a whole when you've completed it, and the whole meter and rhythm of what you've written that is dictated by dactyls and trotches, the long sounding parts of a word and the short sounding parts of a word. When you're looking at all these very technical aspects, you want to remove that entirely from the creative process. You want to create first without even thinking about technicalities. And then after you've finished creating, after the creative process has run its course and unfolded, you've finished your book, then you go back and you edit it. Then you go back and you look at, could that actually sound a little bit better? Am I being clear enough there? Could that sentence sound better if I swapped it around so it wasn't so much a passive sentence but more of an active sentence? Passive clause, active clause. You do all that after it's done. You don't try and do it whilst you're writing. That would be a recipe for a disaster, and you would be tripping up your natural process of being involved in the story whilst you're writing it. You'd be making it so much harder for yourself if you try to get it perfect on the page at the point that you was creating the written word. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's just that when talking to other writers, especially writers that have come from more of a kind of academic background, and then they've got into something that's quite sort of creative, fiction or science fiction, they will tend to, that type of writer will tend to try to get everything right along the way of writing the book, and that's never going to work. It's just going to make it so much harder for you. So you keep the editing and the creative process of writing the book, totally separate. And if you're thinking about completing a book in 12 months, in a year, which is quite a typical thing to do, a lot of writers have a deadline of a year to write their book. Not all writers. It depends how big the book is, really, how complicated the book is as well. But if you're thinking sort of rule of thumb, a lot of writers will think, right, give myself 12 months. And out of that 12 months, generally speaking, you're going to be writing for about, creatively writing, for about 2/3 of that year. And then you're going to be editing for about 1/3 of the year. And there's nothing wrong with going over and over and over the completed manuscript, and it's called rinsing and washing, where you keep on going over and over until everything sounds as good as you can possibly make it sound. And you've looked for all the spelling errors, and there's always a few. There's always a few that get through as well. So just keep on looking for those spelling errors, not so much actual spelling errors, because the spell checker obviously will catch most of that, but you can use wrong words in wrong places. Yeah, for example, you might use the word breach and spell it as in breach, as in trousers, breeches, rather than breach as in pass over a boundary. Your brain is not switched on to the analytical side, the editing side. So as you go back over your manuscript, you will find odd words and you think, why did I put that word in there? It's because you're in a different zone. You're in a creative zone, and that creative part of your energy, your mindset, I'm going to invent a term now, heart set, mindset and heart set. When you're in that creative zone, very different to the analytical editing zone, and so you will see things that are wrong afterwards, but that's the time to catch stuff that's wrong and put it right after you've already completed your manuscript. Okay, so editing, creative writing, never the twain shall meet. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Join me next time, where we'll be looking at other aspects of writing in a Writer's Corner. See you next time.